Chapter 14. The Sound of Splinters. It didn't sound like much at first, just a crack. Sharp, quick, like a branch snapping in the woods. But in the early morning hush of the bridge site, it sliced through the rhythm of hammers and half-finished conversations. Silence rippled outward. Every hand froze. Every eye turned. Jake was halfway across the span when it happened again. Crack, followed by a deep, low groan, the kind that came from inside the bones of a structure, and the shuffle of panicked feet on wooden planks. Everyone off. Now! Marcus's voice cut through the fog. Walt dropped his level and started waving people back toward the bank. Noah grabbed Elena by the sleeve and pulled her down the incline. Micah froze for a half-second too long before Jenny's voice snapped him into motion. Jake ran toward the sound. Of course he did. The damage was concentrated, but it was also unmistakable. At the main joint between the vertical post and support beam, the anchoring bolt was gone. Not loose. Gone. And one of the diagonal braces bore a jagged cut, clean, intentional, as if someone had taken a saw to it and stopped halfway through. Jake crouched, fingers trembling as he ran them over the edge. This wasn't rot. This wasn't weather. This wasn't some structural oversight or natural wear. This was deliberate. This was sabotage. By mid-morning, the sheriff had come and gone. He'd taken pictures, made notes, asked questions, but left with little more than a tired shrug and a half apology. No cameras, no witnesses. Could have been anything, he said, though his tone made it clear he didn't believe that either. Jake stood with Grace on the bank, arms crossed, jaw tight, watching the volunteers move slower than usual. No one laughed. No one called out measurements. Even Elena had stopped scribbling notes. This wasn't a protest, Grace said quietly beside him. It was a warning. Jake nodded, eyes locked on the fractured beam. They didn't want to stop the build. They wanted to shake the builder. Grace looked at him, steady. And did they? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. That evening, the workshop was still except for the soft scratch of graphite and the occasional creak of the stool, as Jake shifted his weight. The air smelled of sawdust and cold resolve. Blueprints fanned out across the table like a map of second chances, some stained, some redrawn, all marked with the weight of what had almost been lost, but Jake wasn't studying them. He was staring at the open journal, fingers smudged with pencil, thumb tracing a line of faded ink beneath the heading. Joint integrity. Note to self. A weak joint doesn't fail in peace. It waits for pressure. Jake closed his eyes and took a slow breath. In through his nose, out through his mouth. Was this about the bridge or about him? The truth was, it didn't matter. Both had been tested, and only one of them had bolts missing. He reached for a pencil, flipped to a blank page in the back, and scribbled a new line under his growing list. Builder's Code number 5. Don't let sabotage make you forget the blueprint. Pressure exposes weakness, but it also reveals what's worth reinforcing. He stared at the words, then underlined them once, firm and slow. They would reinforce the joint tomorrow. But tonight, he was reinforcing something else. The next morning, Jake arrived before sunrise. The splintered beam still stood like a scar, but the ground beneath it no longer felt empty. Elena and Noah Reyes were already measuring fresh boards, Noah muttering calculations under his breath, while Elena marked each piece like she was prepping for a design showcase. Walt grumbled about someone touching his lumber again, but he still grabbed the measuring tape and fell in line. Jenny handed out coffee and muffins. No smiles, no small talk, just steady presence. She didn't meet Jake's eyes. Not because she was angry, but because she wasn't sure she could look at him without hers brimming with tears. She'd known him since he was a lanky teen, helping his dad on side jobs. She'd prayed when he left, cried when he didn't stay after the funeral. And now here he was, standing in Sabotage's shadow, trying to rebuild something that never stayed built. Her heart broke a little, not out of doubt, but because she knew how exhausting hope could be, so she stayed quiet. But she stayed. Even Evan showed up, tool belt slung around his hips, holding a new beam with the same grit he reserved for stubborn machinery and bad coffee. They didn't talk about the sabotage. They didn't have to. They just started rebuilding. And when Jake helped raise the replacement beam, Evan on one side, Marcus on the other, he felt it again. That strange, holy weight, not just lumber, legacy, not just construction, conviction. What had cracked under pressure wasn't gone. It was being reforged, reframed. And in the quiet press of shoulders and calloused hands, Jake understood. This wasn't just resistance. This was refinement. And the blueprint had never been his alone.